it's Heidi from the Launchpad at Indian Trails Public Library, and today I am bringing you another DIY project. This time we will be making our own little Animal Crossing keychains in honor of the first anniversary of Animal Crossing's New Horizons. Before we get started, just a few little housekeeping things I want to take care of. The first thing is that for those of you who were able to register and get a kit, your kit should come with most of the supplies. Coming up, we'll go over and review those supplies and talk about a few extra things you might need to get yourself from home. For those of you who weren't able to register and get a kit of supplies, I will make sure that there is a link in the description box below with a list of those supplies and some places where you can find them. I also just want to let everybody know that we have been working hard at the Launchpad as always. Even though the space is closed, we are still there working for you. So some of our staff have put together what we are calling the Launchpad Tech Bites, and those are just some fun, creative things that you can do with some of the supplies that we check out for our Launchpad on the go, as well as using some of our databases like Creative Bug. And finally, always remember to watch the events calendar for any more upcoming events. Just as a hint, if you haven't seen our April-May newsletter or seen our calendar yet, we do have some more Animal Crossing content and programs coming up for our middle schoolers and high schoolers, including another little DIY project. So keep an eye open for those and make sure you get registered so you can get one of those kits. So that's all the news I have for you, and without any more ado, Isabel and I here are going to move it along and get started on the craft. Enjoy and happy making! Included in your Animal Crossing keychain kit are the following supplies: a 12-pack of colored pencils, a sharpener. You should also have a tiny bag of findings that includes the keyring portion, three small, three small split rings, one large split ring, and your little recipe bottle, showing in close up right here. You also have a template that you'll use to trace your images on the shrink plastic, and we are including two pieces of shrink plastic just in case you want to make some more of these little charms, or if you make a mistake or you want to give it a second try, or of course you can do whatever you want with your second piece of shrink plastic and just test them out. The items that we couldn't include in your kit include a pair of needle nose pliers, so any pliers like these or similar to these, just so that you can press your split rings closed when we're assembling your keychains. You'll also want a pair of nice sharp scissors of any size, just something that you'll be able to cut your shrink plastic with once you're done coloring and designing. And I would recommend a single hole punch if you have it, but if not, a 3-hole punch like this will also work. You just need some type of hole punch to use to create the holes that your split rings will go into when we're assembling our keychains. To get started, you'll want to lay your template on the table first. And then take your shrink plastic, which has two sides to it. The one side is a shinier side that is more reflective. You can see me and the camera, and if you flip it over, you'll find the other side is more matte, a little bit rougher. This is the side that we are going to be coloring on. So you'll want to put that shiny side down. But first, I forgot to mention masking tape. If you don't have this, that's okay, but using masking tape to tape down your template will be really helpful. So I like to tape down the top and the bottom of it just to keep it from wiggling around while you're coloring, but really that is totally up to you, just so it's not moving around. And then you will tape your plastic down as well, to also keep it from not moving. One thing to keep in mind while you're doing this is that after we're done, we will be cutting these out, and we'll make sure to leave these tabs at the top of each of our charms where we're going to put the punch the holes. So make sure that when you're positioning your plastic with the matte side up again, that you leave enough room at the top of the plastic where when you cut it out, the tabs can go. And I'm going to go ahead and, once it's in the right place, tape it down just like this. So now nothing can move, and we should be ready to color. Of course, like I was saying, if you don't have any masking tape, that's totally okay. You can just use your hands to lay flat on and hold your shrink plastic down to your template as you work. It just sometimes, if you're doing it that way, you run the risk of accidentally moving your plastic a little bit. So I think I'm going to start over here with the leaf. One thing you can do, I'm not going to do this, but if you would like, you can grab a permanent marker like a Sharpie. This one is a double point. It has a fine tip edge and then a extra fine tip edge. So there's the fine tip. And then the extra fine tip. And you can use a permanent marker like this if you want to do an outline of your shape. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and grab my green color pencil and use that to outline the whole shape. And if you've noticed, I've started coloring very quickly. I'm not really this speedy. To keep the process moving though, and so that we don't end up with an hour-long video, I am speeding this up just a bit. So I just finished outlining my leaf, and I'm going to go ahead and go in and start coloring it. Feel free, if you're really good with colored pencils at shading and whatnot, to add as much dimension as you want to this. It's not necessarily my forte, but as long as you can get it colored in with your green, you do have two colors of green to work with. And while I finish coloring up this leaf, I'm going to give you an Animal Crossing fact. So my first Animal Crossing fact is that the original Animal Crossing was called Dobutsu no Mori, which literally means Animal Forest. And it was actually released on the Nintendo 64 in 2001, only in Japan. It wasn't until later that they re-released it on the GameCube, and this is the version that was first released in the West. Alright, just finishing up the leaf here. And now it's time to move on to the fossil, right here. Take a look at your color pencils and make some choices of colors that you think will be most fitting for this. There is, of course, this darker blue, a sky blue, and you will want to grab the white color pencil.
I'm also going to use this black just to do some of the outline tracing here. Of course, it's totally up to you what colors you use. Maybe you'll want to do some shading with that lighter color blue or leave it out. This is your project, so it's really up to you. All right, and here we are ready to move on and start coloring our fossil now that we've picked out our colors. I'm going to go ahead and get started tracing the outline in this black before moving on into the inside of my image with my other colors. So let's get back to a few more Animal Crossing facts while we work on this. So as I mentioned before, the original N64 release of Animal Crossing that came out in 2001 was reissued and re-released on the GameCube, and this is the version that we saw in the US. The GameCube remake could make use of the Game Boy Advanced, which was the handheld system at the time, if you don't know about that. And you could connect the Game Boy Advanced using a special cable to the GameCube and buy special cards in stores to unlock items and mini games. So, in a way, this was the original kind of DLC that you could get for Animal Crossing. While as now, it's easy enough for them to do updates to Animal Crossing and add new features to go along with the changing seasons and special holidays. They needed other ways to do that way back in the day. All right, now that I've got about to finish up outlining the blue parts of my fossil, I'm going to go ahead and start coloring in the blue on my fossil. You can use the light color if you would like to try and do some shading with that, or you could make a choice like I'm doing right now and go with the darker color and just go ahead and fill that in.
As I finish up coloring in this blue portion, I will be moving on to the white spaces next in our fossil. You do want to color in the white spaces with the white color pencil because otherwise these will just be clear spaces. They'll be the color of the plastic. So in a case like this, using the white pencil is very appropriate and necessary. Otherwise, when you cut this out and go to shrink it down, you will have clear spaces in those places. Alright, and now that I'm done with the fossil, it's time to move on to this final charm, which is our bell bag. For those of you who don't know, this is the currency in the Animal Crossing game. So I'm going to go ahead and move my other pencils out of the way and then go ahead and pick some colors for the bell bag. I'm looking at using this brown, red, orange, and the orange to build up the colors that I want for the bell bag. And to start, I'm going to go ahead and begin by tracing the outline of the bell bag. And while I go ahead and color this, I think it'll be appropriate to talk about a few of the characters in the Animal Crossing games. And in particular, right now, I'm going to start with the secretary on our island, the lovely dog, Isabel. Isabel's character design holds a little secret. If you look closely at the bag here, her head closely resembles the shape of this bag of bells. And the name kind of hints at it. She is a bell, Isabel. In the Japanese games, her name is Shizue, which alludes to the fact that she is actually a Shih Tzu dog. Another little fact about an Animal Crossing character is the person who takes the character who likes to take all of your bells as you earn them, and that is Tom Nook, who within the U.S. is often, or in the Western translation, is often referred to as raccoon, but in the the Japanese game, he's actually modeled after an animal called a tanuki. So if you think about his name, Tom Nook, that's also a play on words based on what his original animal is, a tanuki or Tom Nook. All right, now that we have all of our pieces colored, it's time to separate and pull our shrink plastic sheet away from the template that we've been using, so we can get a good look at how well we've filled in that color, and then start thinking about cutting it out. So I'm going to go ahead and also take off the template. Let's get that peeled off of there. And then we can lay our sheet back down and see any of the places where we might have missed some of that color that we couldn't see when the template was under it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my blue and fill in some of these white spaces. Pardon my head getting in the way. Just to make sure everything's a little bit more saturated. Once I'm happy with getting these empty white spaces filled in with all of my colors, it's going to be time to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and peel the tape off of my shrink plastic and get ready to cut out my shapes. So one thing to remember is that we're going to need tabs where our hole punch will go on each of these. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this and cut the tabs as well. If you're not sure what I mean by tabs, we'll be back in a moment, and you'll be able to see what I mean. So maybe wait just a moment until we get back and you can see what I mean by tabs. Alright, so I'm going to take these, go cut them out, and with the magic of video and editing, you'll see what I mean. And here we are. Here are my cutout pieces. As you can see with the charms, I didn't cut directly on the line. I left a little bit of a space, and one of the reasons is as you cut around some of these corners and other pieces, sometimes they split a little bit. But like I'm showing you right here, so cutting just around the edges, not right on, and then going up and leaving some of that room for a tab. In this case with the leaf, I didn't cut out that circle because personally I think it's just too difficult for such a fine detail, and I don't think it's really necessary. So once you have them cut out and your tabs, it's time to punch a hole, and you're going to do that in the tab that you cut. So just like that, I've got a hole right there on each of those tabs. This is a little easier with a single hole punch because you can see exactly where your hole is going. But if all you have is 3-hole punch, that's fine. And you can always use your scissors to kind of cut that and trim that down around your hole before we move on to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and trim these down just a little bit. Be careful not to cut too close, or else then you won't have a place to put your split ring when the time comes, and you'll have to start over that whole coloring process, which is one of the reasons I added that extra sheet of shrink plastic there. So going to finish cutting these down and trimming them a little bit. And then, now that we've got that cut, it is time to move over to the oven. Alright, I have brought my pieces to the kitchen, and I've set up a cookie sheet with some parchment paper and laid my pieces out on that. Remember, if you are younger, to make sure you get some help from an adult with this part. If you're older and prone to accidents, you might want some help from an adult with this part as well. So when you lay your pieces on your cookie sheet, you want to make sure that there's some space in between them, because as they shrink down, they will they'll begin to curl, and you don't want them too close, or they may end up curling and fusing to each other. For this project, I am using my toaster oven. I have it set and preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use a standard oven to do that, but you will want to make sure it preheats. So once this is done preheating, I'll go ahead and get them into the oven, where they will begin to shrink and curl, and this is happening at a much quicker pace than would usually happen because I have it sped up. But it could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for these to shrink down and curl. The curling may worry you. Don't let it. They will, as you can see, begin to flatten back out. And once they flatten out, pretty much, you'll want to leave them in the heat for about 30 seconds more before you grab some oven mitts and open up your oven to take out your cookie sheet and place it to the side so that your pieces can have the opportunity to cool. And you want to let them cool for about 10 to 15 minutes. And once these have cooled, we'll move back to our workspace, which I love that we can do by the magic of editing. So here are the cooled pieces, in addition to all of the findings that came in your bag, your little recipe jar, our split rings, and of course, you'll want the key ring so that you can make a keychain. You'll also need to get a hold of those pliers that I mentioned earlier. These are going to be helpful in attaching all of these components to our key ring. So grabbing the large split ring, you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and slip it into the hole, or the hook at the top. And then take it, and I want to attach this to the very bottom link of the chain that is attached to the key ring. Using the pliers, we're going to go ahead and just pinch those two sides of the split ring together, like so, so that your split ring, or so that your recipe jar is attached to your key ring. Next, we'll take one of our charms. So I'm going to go with the fossil here and take one of the smaller split rings and put in the hole that we created before. Get a little close up there for you to see. And then I'll take, you could go up to the next link or one above that, it's up to you. And I'm going to link those together like that. And once again, taking my pliers and pinching those two pieces together to close the ring. We're going to continue to do this with each charm. You can pinch it as tightly closed if you're worried about it, but most likely it's not going to come off. Alright, moving on to the leaf. And you can do these, of course, in any order that you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and go with my leaf next, repeating the same process of putting the split ring in, putting the split ring onto the keychain. Oh, and of course sometimes you may drop it once, so we'll try that again. Does take a little bit of finesse sometimes. Go ahead and pinch that one close so that we don't have to worry about it falling off. And finally, Here we go with our very last one, our very last charm. Got my split ring there, and I'm going to attach it to the chain on my key ring, which I will say, for every additional piece that you add, it gets a little bit clunkier and harder to work with, so don't be surprised if you drop it again, just like I did. So that's one drop. Let's see if I can do it without dropping it again. Let me get the split ring in there. Alright, let's try this again. Get the split ring attached to the keychain. Let me get those pliers and try it. And I dropped it again. So remember, no one is perfect at this. Sometimes it takes multiple chances. Let's give it another try here. Split ring into the hole on my charm. Then getting the split ring onto the chain. Holding all of that together with my fingers. Going for the pliers in hopes that this time, maybe. Nope, still nothing. Okay, trying again. My pliers and pinching it closed. Finally, success. And there you go. I have my split rings all connected, and you have, hopefully, and I have, a cute little Animal Crossing keychain to attach to your keys or your backpack or to pass along to a friend. I hope you had a great time making your Animal Crossing keychain with me. We always like to see and hear what you thought of the project, so feel free to share it on social media by tagging #ITPLDmade or email us at digitalmaker@itpld.org with your pictures or any feedback that you might have. Thanks for joining us, and have a lovely rest of your day. Happy making, everyone.